Okay. I suppose I better let you share the screen.
Share screen then.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
And you can hear me?
Fine.
Yep.
And
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see it.
Okay.
What beautiful sky.
When yes, you've seen that one before. I think I did quite well in a camera club competition with it. So anyway, when Peter asked me to give a talk to fill the program, I thought immediately of black and white. You see, in many ways, black and white is my first love. Well, I suppose not my first love. That's my dear wife, of course. But my first love in photography. I am, if there is such a term, a monochromaholic. This love affair began from an early age when I watched old black and white comedies with my dad. My dad came from a time when TV was only black and white, and when he got his first color TV, he refused to look back, and with the exception of Laurel and Hardy, wouldn't watch black and white on principle. But I loved the old black and white movies. I lapped them up. I knew all the best lines in the Humphrey Bogart films. I had a crush on Miss Kubelik in The Apartment. Later on, I laughed with my daughters through Some Like It Hot. I screamed when Alfred Hitchcock wanted me to. And I was just blown away by the sheer emotion evoked by moody, clever use of dark tones and shadows in films like It's a Wonderful Life, and especially The Third Man, a movie raised to a pinnacle, in my view, by fantastic cinematography, in particular, amazing, acclaimed use of light and shadows. Now, in my teens, as I've mentioned before, I became keen on photography. And naturally, being a confirmed monochromaholic by this stage, I turned to the great black and white masters. I admired the tremendous use of light and shade by Ansel Adams and other great artists, such as Dorothea Lange and especially Fan Ho. Fan Ho is fantastic in my book. And more recently, Michael Kenner. Another hero of mine was a medical practitioner, a GP with a stellar reputation for fine art printing. Tim Rudman, he was the master of lith printing. Tim's photographs, I thought, were things of incredible, awesome beauty. And they encouraged me into the darkroom, where I printed a few humble images of my own, very feeble imitations of these other works, but my first steps in black and white photography. Now, those of you who've spent any time in a darkroom know that color printing is pretty exacting in terms of temperatures and timings, whereas black and white is really forgiving. The equipment and materials for black and white also suit a student budget much better than color. And so the love affair continued. Of course, in these days, it's out with the darkroom, in with the computer. We don't need dedicated black and white film. We don't need chemicals. We don't need thermometers to check the chemicals are at the right temperature. Making a black and white image has never been easier. Manipulating it for effect has never been easier. And emulating the great masters is, I suppose, in theory at least, a sort of feasible challenge to take on. And then there are the modern masters out there now to inspire and encourage monochromaholics like me. These days, I thrill to the wonderful cinematic quality photos of Alan Schaller, who I've commended to you in a previous talk. He's really a wonderful photographer. More recently, I've discovered Simon Street, who has 7 fellowships of the Royal Photographic Society and happens to excel in street photography. So street by name, street by nature. And here are a few from his set of race meeting images. And I think they're all wonderful and clever in different ways. This one I find very, very humorous. Then there's a brand of graphic black and white photography that really appeals to me, which I call the graphic architectural school. Examples here from Juan Lopez Reith, Joel Chinchlar, David Garthwaite, Julia Anna Godspodaru, and then among the RPS speakers that I've listened to recently, Mark Reeves and Colin Jarvis, to name but a few. So my love affair continues to burn brightly, and many of the entries you see from me in Camera Club competitions are monochrome ones. Now, some of you may think like my dad. When we see in color, when we can photograph in color, when color is so vivid, why on earth give that up? Why black and white when great pictures can be made in color? Well, I like color too, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to set out some reasons why black and white should be considered, some advantages or strengths it has, recognizing, of course, it's a matter of taste. So what has black and white got going for it? Well, for me, first and foremost, I think simplicity and clarity of message. In my last talk, I described a framework of thinking about composition in terms of subject and expression. I suggested you could make better photos if you make a very clear, specific choice facing that subject. Even more important when you know your subject is to eliminate or minimize things that are not that subject or which detract from it. A nice analogy I've heard compares a photograph to a movie. So in the movie, the star actor has to shine. Everything, the script, the lighting, the support cast, everything is geared to that. The lead actor may be supported by other cast members, but they shouldn't outshine the star. They're there to help the star shine more brightly. So simplicity, clarity of meaning are very important in the movies and in photography. Here's an image of mine from a recent PDI, and the question I put is, does this photo require color? Is color the subject, or would color help to emphasize the subject? If not, is it a distraction? Can you do away with it? Would the point of the photo be clearer without color? Clearly I thought so, and that's why I presented it in black and white. Here's an even clearer example I found on the website Digital Photography School. On the left, three things catch my eye: the blue cap, the green jacket, and the skin tones. But on the right, only one thing catches my eye: the skin tones. And it's then easier to focus on the face and the hands. The color in the original is a distraction, and black and white is good at hiding distractions and strengthening clarity of message. This ability of black and white to simplify particularly shines through when the point of a photo is to emphasize a pattern, shape, or texture. It's easier to be graphic in black and white than in color. Black and white is the ideal medium for showing off light and shade and contrast. Of course, color can do this, but typically black and white is better. It's more immediate, it's more extreme, it's more impactful. One reason that black and white lends itself to showcasing light, shade, and contrast is that it's easy to manipulate the tones and push them strongly. Whereas in color, you have to be more careful. In color, strong contrast tends to go with strong saturation, and extremes lead to odd colors and artifacts. But it's like the old physical darkroom. In the digital darkroom, black and white is more forgiving than color. Photos like these have been pushed tonally to an extreme that just wouldn't be possible in color. Now, you may not like this particular result, each to his own, but I hope you can see there's a lot of creative potential here for you to carve out something that appeals to you. Going back to the old black and white movies, I love their mood and atmosphere. And I think that's because tones, light and shade were being manipulated to focus my eye and create a sense of drama. I've since thought that in our minds, black and white imagery carries emotional baggage, which we as photographers can exploit. So a straight color photo of this stately home is never going to be anything more than a picture postcard. But a tonally manipulated black and white can get across that feel of timelessness and class. It's easier to suggest nostalgia in black and white with the right subject matter, or to make a scene look moody and bleak, or to suggest that it's strange and unsettling. Of course, color can play to our emotions too, but with black and white, I fancy we have a head start. I think many people think of black and white as sophisticated. They think of it as timeless, as special, rather than everyday. So if you want to engage viewers of your photos, you're sort of pushing against an open door. So those are some of the whys of black and white, why I like it, why I think it works, why I think it can be powerful in lots of situations. The how is a bit of a can of worms, and quite frankly, a complete discussion is beyond the scope of one talk, but I'll do my best to cover it. So the first area to mention, perhaps get out the way, is image capture, taking a photo with black and white in mind. If you want a quick result, and if you're not at all fussy, then these days you can generally set your camera to make a monochrome JPEG and Bob's your uncle, job done. But if you want the best result, you don't do that. You set it to camera raw to preserve color information and as much data as your sensor will capture, and you convert the raw file to black and white later in Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity, or whatever. Now, of course, I know many of you will know this and you will know the reasons behind it, but others who don't may find it a bit odd that we capture in color to get a good black and white. And I'll show you why in a little while. The second aspect of capture is that it's quite hard to visualize what a scene will look like in black and white. We don't see the world in light and shade without color. Luckily these days, most modern cameras allow you to set your viewfinder or LCD screen to black and white, even when taking a color photo. And if you can do this, that's a huge advantage. If you set your camera up like this, I guarantee your worldview will change. You'll see opportunities that would otherwise pass you by. So if you're at all serious about black and white, I believe it's worth playing around and trying this out for yourself. Okay, so this much is pretty much agreed and straightforward. But how best to process for black and white is not straightforward. If you look on the internet, you'll quickly become confused. You will find many, many videos with many, many methods. Which one to choose? Well, a key point to grasp in my view, something that's not really talked about very much, is the difference between actual brightness values, black and white conversions based on actual brightness values, and those based on perceptual ones. Now, What on earth is Palmer talking about? What does he mean? Well, let me explain, beginning with this well-known optical illusion. Now, you'll have to take my word for it, but the purples in these two circles are identical in color, brightness, and saturation. They are the same. I know because I made this graphic for you, but it sure don't look like that, does it? You'd swear, wouldn't you, that the left circle is lighter, but it's not. It's an illusion. Illusion has a name. It's called color relativity, and it just means that how we perceive a color varies according to what's around it. General point I want to make is that we don't always see the world as it really is. In fact, we see what our brains see, not what our eyes see, and we can be fooled. Now, what has this got to do with making a black and white image? Well, here's another optical illusion that's a bit more relevant. I've made this grid too, and I've set it up in such a way that the actual brightness and saturation values are the same across each row. They're the same. But again, we don't perceive it like that. I hope you agree with me that green appears a bit lighter than red, appears lighter than blue. But they're not in this example. That's another optical illusion. Now, when editing software converts color to different shades of gray, there's a choice. You can take the actual brightness values of the colors, or you can take their perceived values, how they are, or how we expect them to be. And here are some typical results from these two different sorts of methods. If the actual values are used, because the brightness is the same across a row, you get the same shades of gray. The blues, the greens, the reds of the same brightness become indistinguishable. That's not a great outcome because contrast is the lifeblood of black and white photography, and the software has just thrown away contrast opportunity. Making a good black and white conversion is not just taking the color away. You need to do something more. With a perceptual method, the software is somehow making the greens a bit lighter in tone than they really are, and it's making the blues a bit darker than they really are. How much lighter, how much darker, that's a bit arbitrary. It's liable to vary a little bit. But the results with perceptual methods often look more correct to us, and they look more interesting. In any case, actual and perceived conversion methods will give very different results. Now, how do you know whether a particular method described on YouTube video, this is the best way to make a black and white, whether it uses actual brightness values or perceptual values? Well, I'm afraid the short answer is you don't, unless you take the steps that I have to find out. Here are 8 methods by which you can get black and white in affinity. And I've left out perhaps half a dozen other ways, and you get the same choices in other editing programs. Now, to my knowledge, no online manual, no video will tell you which of these methods are based on actual brightness values and which ones are on perceptual values. So let's dip into affinity at this point and see a few examples and check this out in a bit more detail and see what impact it has on real photos. You can see that all right, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So here's my grid again. And on the right-hand side in the layers panel, I've added a series of adjustment layers, and they come either from clicking on this icon and choosing from this list, or I could do it over here. I could go to layer, new adjustment layer, and choose from this list. It's the same. So I've added all these layers, and I've color coded them. So the first three methods, the yellow ones, all have a saturation slider which you can turn down. So this is, sorry, let me activate the layer. This is HSL, and it has a saturation slider. And if I pull it all the way down, you can see straight away that this is using actual brightness values, not perceptual ones. And we've lost all the contrast information across each row, as I predicted. And in my book, that's an unsatisfactory result. I can't recommend this method. We then have a layer called recolor. It looks a little bit odd. Its purpose is not to make black and white. It's to alter the color in a picture, which you can do with this slider. But it has a saturation slider. And if I turn that down to 0, well, you get the same result. It's equally crude. It's also based on actual brightness values, and I can't recommend this one either. We then have, in the last of this set of 3, we have a vibrance adjustment layer, which also has a saturation slider. And by now you'd think that this would go wrong too, wouldn't you? But actually it doesn't. It gives a much better result. So clearly a perceptual method of conversion is being used here, and that's not too shabby. Then we have 3 that are labeled in green, and they all use a grayscale. They all have a grayscale option. So to show you here, this is simply levels. And on this side, you can see the words RGB, but there's a drop down. And if I choose gray, I get a rather nice perceptual adjustment for black and white. And more than this, I can make the sort of other changes in contrast that you would with a levels layer. So that's using a nice perceptual method. Curves is essentially identical with only one small difference, and that's that you have to wiggle the line slightly in order to get the effect. But when you do, of course, you can make all these tonal manipulations on top of a nice perceptual adjustment. And then the third in this set is something called a channel mixer. I won't go into what that's normally used for, but it has a grayscale option, and it gives you a nice conversion, and again the option to move things around a bit more to taste. Now, I've left to last what many people would think of as the first port of call. To make black and white, surely you use a black and white adjustment layer. Well, you do that in Affinity. I'm afraid that's the result you get, and it's not very good, is it? And it's because the method is based on actual brightness values, but this time it's rendering things pure white instead of grey, like the HSL desaturation method was. So it's really not very good, is it? We've also got a black and white adjustment layer in Photoshop, and it looks a bit like that. I must say I'm working on an old version of Photoshop, which is CS5 that Peter lent me. So I may not be completely, this may not be completely what's happening, but sorry, the thing I wanted you to notice, so let's go back to Affinity for a second. The thing I want you to notice is that all these color sliders are in a line. They're all stuck at 100%, so that's the default choice. Now in Photoshop, the default choice is this, the line is staggered. And that is the perceptual adjustment in action. So by default, those sliders have been tweaked a bit to give you a perceptual black and white conversion. Now, of course, I can easily tweak these sliders in Affinity. In fact, I have. This is what I'm showing you. So I can match Photoshop. I could save this as a preset, so you could use this as your straight away out of the box. But so it's not the end of the world, but the starting choice is more intelligent in Photoshop than it is in Affinity. Okay, now you might quite reasonably say that the test grid I've made here is very artificial. So we don't normally see blocks of highly saturated color, 100% brightness, like next to one another like this. So how much does the conversion method matter with real pictures? Well, I'm afraid it's quite a lot. So here's a picture of chilies. We've got some red ones, we've got some purple ones, we've got some yellow ones, we've got one orange one. If I apply the HSL desaturation method, so I've just moved this slider down to save time, but it's what I've just shown you. If we do that, I've only got two colors of chili now. I can't tell the yellows and reds apart. I can't pick out the orange. If I use the channel mixer, on the other hand, I get a really nice result, and I can pick out the orange as different as well. If I use Affinity's black and white adjustment layer in its default position, well, don't go there. You know, it's like the HSL one, except everything is white instead of gray. And if I get the Photoshop one, I get that kind of result, which is not bad, but not actually as good as the channel mixer, as it happens in this example. So the point I wanted to make, though, is clearly it does matter which methods you use, and some choices, specifically those based on actual brightness values, give pretty awful results. Okay, now I've given Affinity's black and white adjustment layer a bad press. But really the problem is that those sliders are all in a line like that in their default position. But as many of you will know, the point of having these color sliders is never to leave them in their default position. It's to move them around to taste. And once you do that, you can get a pretty decent result. So here's quite a nice scene. I was attracted by the windmill, but particularly by the cloud formation and the lattice shadow here on the front of the mill. Is color important to this picture? Would black and white get these points across more clearly? Well, let's see. Let's first of all, add a Affinity's black and white adjustment layer. Well, it's giving a flat result, but you wouldn't really be surprised now. It's no good with these sliders in their default alignment. But I can make the blues darker like that. I can make what is red lighter like that. The grass, well, you might think it's green. It's mainly affected by the yellow slider, and I can make the grass dark, or I can make the grass light, whatever I want. And in a few seconds only, I've got quite a decent result. There may be other things that I do to edit this picture, but actually a lot of the editing is done quite quickly and easily with this basic tool. I'd just like to state two things that I think are obvious, but they're probably worth saying so that everybody is clear. I'm manipulating the tones here based on their underlying colors. Now, of course, if I'd thrown away all that color information when I took the photo, I couldn't do that. And that's why, as many of you, perhaps all of you will know, but I'm not sure, it's better. That's why it's better to capture a color raw than a monochrome JPEG, even if you know at the time that black and white is your intended endpoint. The second point I'd like to make is that I'm manipulating colors here. I'm manipulating the tones in my picture here according to color. But when I use the curves adjustment and its grayscale option, right, like this, I'm manipulating according to the existing tones. So what is bright, I can make brighter. What is dark, I can make darker. I can lift the shadows. I can increase the contrast and so on. So there are certain things, but I can't do anything. I can't manipulate according to color. So each of these filters has a different role, really. The black and white filter is good if you've got a lot of color information in your picture and you want to manipulate that. But if you've got a flat image that doesn't have much color, you might be better off using a grayscale curves conversion. So each of these has a place. They do slightly different things. So I could then try and make my black and white images for club competitions using one or more of the tools I've shown you. In fact, I don't. And I've reserved the very best option, in my view, for last. Anyone really serious about black and white photography should consider stepping outside Lightroom, stepping outside Photoshop Affinity, and investing in a program called Nik Silver Effects Pro. Silver Effects is one of 8 programs that come together in a collection, a package that's called the Nik Collection, which is a monstrously large, fantastically good set of editing tools and effects designed with us photographers in mind. It's not restricted to black and white. There are lots of color programs. They're excellent too. But just the black and white part, in my view, is worth the ticket alone. It says here in the marketing that it's the gold standard. And that's true. It's the go-to software for the world's professional black and white photographers, really. It's the best. But you have to pay up for it. So some of you will know Nik's history. You may remember a time when it was very expensive. Then it was taken over by Google and the price came down. Eventually it was given away for free. Now it's owned by a French company called DxO, and it'll set you back £100 in a Black Friday deal. So you have to like your black and white photography a lot, and the other things that Nik does, which are also very, very good. But if you do, it's a marvelous program to have. It's also one that's far too involved to cover in detail in the time we have left this evening. Most of the videos I found on the internet to explain Nik to you last an hour or more, and we don't have that time. But I have managed to find a short video that shows you something of its potential. It's 10 years old, I'm afraid. And when it's finished, I'll ask Peter to show it. When it's finished, I'll just add a few points of my own. I'll show you the more modern version of the software in operation. So Peter, would you like to take back control and show the video for a moment?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, Keith, and I'll
Right. Now, how do I do it?
I
right.
should be on the drop down menu somewhere.
Right. Okay, I found it. Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Right.
Fine, and we'll watch. I'll share the video.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can you see that up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's. Oh, just a sec. I forgot to. I've got to share this. I've got to share the sound. Otherwise, you won't hear anything. Okay, here we go.
I want to look at Silver Effects Pro 2, black and white software from Nik Software. Nik was recently bought by Google, so you may see that if you're on the Nik page here, it's now saying the Nik collection by Google, and their prices have come down a fair bit. Silver Effects Pro 2 costs $150, but you can also get the whole collection, which they're all pretty good, for $150, so you might as well get the whole shebang. But you can download a free trial. Definitely worth having a look into. So you can get that right here, and they've got some great education on their website, but I'm just going to show you quickly how I go about using this in my workflow. I'm going to go over to Lightroom, and I'm going to pick an image. I've got an image right here that I want to send into Silver Effects Pro for editing. I'm just going to right click on this and choose Edit in Silver Effects Pro 2, and it's going to come up with a dialog box, and I can choose that I want to send, this is a raw file, I'm just going to send it into Silver Effects. Now in this case I've already done that just to save some time, so I'm just going to go over to Silver Effects, and here's what we've got. So Silver Effects is going to come by default, it's going to look like this. On the left hand side I've got a series of presets, and on the right hand side I've got controls. So the presets are sort of like trying to pick up a starting place. So this is a neutral one. I might want to look at, like one maybe like this and say, ah, there we go, that looks better. That might be as much as I want to do, or I can tweak things over here. In my case though, I want to start from a neutral image, so I'm just going to click on that. Now, over here on the side, I've got some different sections that I can adjust. I think it's meant to start from top to bottom, but I find, generally speaking, that I want to deal with film types and color filter first, because otherwise I get the contrast exactly the way I like it, and then everything gets mucked up some more. So if I'm looking to emulate the look of a specific film, perhaps I was a Tri-X shooter and I want to get that look, I can choose any one of these ones down here. So for instance, if I wanted to see what this looked like on Tri-X, I could choose Tri-X, and that will emulate the grain structure, the color sensitivity, and the contrast response. Now in this case, I have no romantic attachment to a specific film, so I'm just going to leave that blank. I'm also going to come up to color filter, and this is going to emulate the look of putting a color filter on the front of your lens. So for instance, if I put a red filter in, anything that's bright, that's got red in it, is going to appear brighter. Anything that's got blue, which is sort of roughly the opposite color, is going to get darker. So if I click on this, you'll notice the sky got a little bit darker because the sky is sort of bluish. It's got some blue in it anyways. So I think I'm going to leave that on there, and I'm going to go up to my global adjustments. Now, it may just appear like this with 3 sliders. You'll notice that each one of these sliders actually has a little disclosure triangle beside it. So you can open it up and get more options. So we've got brightness, midtone, or brightness, contrast, and structure. I'm going to start with my contrast. So I have just a general contrast adjustment that I can move up, and that gives me just, general contrast. It moves stuff that's dark towards black, stuff that's light towards white. I also have this amplify whites, and amplify whites, what it does is it looks specifically in the shadows and tries to brighten the brighter parts of the shadows. So I'm going to increase that a little. I'm also going to come down to this amplify blacks, and it's going to look in the highlights, and it's going to try and darken the bright parts of the highlights. So I'm going to move that down, and you'll notice that really helps give me some drama in those clouds. Now I want to come down to my contrast again and move that up. I like this image pretty contrasty, so I'm going to move it to be like that. Now I can also come up and adjust the individual parts of the tonal range and brightness. So for instance, I'm starting to get a lot of blowing out highlights right here. So I'm going to take this highlight slider and I'm going to move it all the way down, and I'm going to recover a little bit of the detail in that sky. Alright, that's all I want to do with brightness. With contrast, I have this soft contrast slider. I find this helpful maybe for portraits and other things where you want soft detail, but in a landscape picture where I want things to look sort of crisp and punchy, I really kind of stay away from that. We come down to structure. Structure is an increased in texture. It's a localized contrast adjustment. So as I move this up, you'll notice that things start to look just a little crunchier. So I'm going to move this up to roughly 50%. I can also adjust it in the individual tonal ranges if I want to, and fine structure is really, really small structure, but I find that it tends, if you increase this, it tends to make it look kind of like over sharpening. So I'm going to leave this set around 0. I have tonality protection, which just allows me to, in the case of shadows, brighten the shadows, and in the case of highlights, darken the highlights. In this case, I'm fine with it. So that's what I want to do in terms of global adjustments. Now I'm going to come down to this selective adjustment section. I'm going to click on this. And what selective adjustment does is when I click in an image, I'm just going to click right here on this boardwalk. It's looking at what the picture originally, what the color picture that it started with, what color that pixel was, what shades, what texture, and it wants to try and build a mask based on similar pixels within an area of influence. I define the area of influence by this little handle right here that's opposite the little gold dot. So as I move this out, it looks for similar pixels in a wider area versus a smaller area. Now if I click right here, I've got control points, and this is control point 1. If I click right here, I can see a mask, so the white area is the area that's selected. So if I do this, it's looking for similar pixels, but the selection's falling off pretty quickly. If I move this out a little bit, it's looking in sort of a wider swath. So I'm just going to click that off again. There we are. So I want to increase the contrast on this boardwalk. So I'm just going to move that contrast up. And it took a second there to catch up. And maybe see what it looks like with a little extra structure. Does it get crunchy? A little too crunchy for my taste. There we go. Now I'm going to increase the brightness just a little bit. And maybe push the contrast a bit further. There we are. So now I like this adjustment, but I want to apply it further up here. So I could just dial in the same settings, or what I could do is if I can hold down my Alt key on the PC, or I'm on a Mac, so my Option key, then I can click and drag a copy with these same settings out here, and just drop that there. Maybe I'll click and drag a copy right here, and maybe over here. I can also group these all together so that I can adjust them individually. I'm just going to select them all. I can hold Shift to select multiple. And if I push Command or Control G, now they're all linked. So I can just change the settings over all of them at once. Okay, next, I'm finding this area to be a bit dark, especially compared to this area right here. So I'm going to drop in a pin. Now you'll notice, as I did that, I'll take that away, that things brightened up. And that's because those points that I had put in before were actually spilling over into this a bit. But when I put a fresh point here, it's now overriding them. And so basically the effect that was spilling over from here into these waters has been removed. I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit. Then I'm going to increase the contrast pretty substantially. Maybe brighten it a bit more. Maybe look at adding a bit of structure. There we are. See how it looks. I'll maybe move this down a little. There we go. Good. And actually, I might need to amplify my whites in the water there. And maybe my blacks too. There we go. I'm also going to come down to these trees. I'm going to click here. And I want the sort of brighter parts of the tree to stand out, so I'm going to use my amplify whites. Like that. But then the overall brightness down a bit. Maybe the contrast up a little bit as well. I'm going to come down to this part of the sky here. Try to darken that down a little bit, see if I've got some detail there that can be recovered. All right. And I might want to just click in here and see if I can, you know what, no, I like it better the way that it is. I think perhaps I've increased this a little too bright in there, so I'm just going to dial that back a bit. And this rail around here is distracting me a bit, so I'm actually going to put a point there and darken it, maybe increase the contrast a bit. And I'll duplicate this by holding Alt or Option, drag it out there, drag it out there. So there we are. If I want to see what my original conversion looked like, I'm just going to click right here. That's the flat conversion, and that's where we are. Just going to click to put that away. So before and after, before and after. It's gotten much better in my opinion. If I want to see what the original color image looks like by comparison, if I go to my history browser right here, I'm going to scroll up to the top and hit the compare button. And now, if I move this little orange slider over to original image, when I hit compare, there's my color image and there's my black and white conversion. Color image, black and white conversion.
Okay. Stop sharing.
Right, shall I
back to you,
take up
please.
the running again? Okay for me to share?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you were looking at Silver Effects Pro 2 there. This is Silver Effects Pro 6, so this is the modern interface. There are quite a lot of similarities, but there are also some improvements. So once again, you have these presets or looks on the left-hand side, and you have all these controls and sliders on the right. Regarding the presets, if you know what you want, they're there to save time. You can make your own presets, you can save them, you can create a favorites list. If you don't know what you want, then running through the left-hand side lets you see some of the creative possibilities, and you can choose what you like. I've favorited a few for you. There are 55 different presets, I think, but just to give you an idea of some of the looks that the program has. So what I want you to notice is that as I click on a preset, these sliders get tweaked. So basically, a preset is a recipe. It's changing all the adjustments on this side. And if you find this, you like this effect, but you find it too strong, then you have the chance to dial it back a bit. Not all the presets suit all the images, of course. So you find one that is closer to what you want. But I hope you can see there are some really rather lovely looks. There are also some quite specialist ones. So this one, oh, it's not catching up. There we go. Is a film noir look. This is an antique plate look. And then you have, well, all sorts of different and rather nice choices. Then if we go over here, I'll just mention some of the things that he didn't or weren't in his version. So here above the histogram, we have a series of boxes, 10 boxes. And if I hover over each box, you'll see a number appear and a shading on the image. And what this is showing you which parts of the image are in which zone in the 10 zone Ansel-Adams system, if you know what that means. So 0 is pure black, and we don't have much of that. 10 is pure white, and we don't have any of that. We don't have anything in zone 9. The highlights are in, the brightest highlights are in zone 8, so there's no clipping in this image. And we can see that quite a lot of the tones are in the dark shadows here. And this is a live preview. So if you move these sliders, then you would it would change. And in skilled hands, I emphasize not my hands because I can't even turn this thing off. In skilled hands, you can precisely control the balance of tones in the image. Next, we come to the brightness and the contrast sliders. He explained those okay. He talked about amplify white and amplify black, but didn't talk very much about dynamic brightness and soft contrast, which is a shame because these are proprietary algorithms that give you a more subtle control, a more photographically sensitive control than the crude sliders. So to show you what I mean, brightness is a crude adjustment. I can, if I was stupid enough to turn this all the way up, I wreck the image. But I can't do that with dynamic brightness. It's intelligent enough that it knows I want some shadows. And if I turn the brightness slider all the way down, once again, I've wrecked the image. But with dynamic brightness, I've really got quite a nice result. And it's preserved. It sensitively preserved the highlights, so it's a more intelligent. It's acting like a photographer would want it to. And it's the same with contrast. So he was very keen on contrast, but it's blunt, whereas soft contrast is lovely. So then structure, he mentioned structure is like clarity, like a clarity slider. It enhances texture and micro contrast, and it can be very powerful. So just look at the effect that has on that image. It's quite stunning. And as he says, you can do that just in the highlights, midtones, or shadows. And rather like it is another proprietary algorithm called Clear View, which also is a very, very powerful slider. The color filters were mentioned. Just to hark back to the time when we put a red or orange filter on our lens to darken skies. Well, in Silver Effects Pro with this hue slider, you can have any color of filter you want. You can have it at any strength you want. He mentioned the film emulation that you could have, but you could make your own film. So you could add grain, you could alter the sensitivities to the different colors, just the tone curve, rather like he showed. Save it as a preset. You've got Palmer's film rather than Tri-X. And down here, you can add photorealistic grain, if that's the sort of thing you want artistically. And there are some rather lovely options for toning, not just sepia, but split toning, and a lot of the things that we would have done in the old days in the dark room: selenium toning, blue toning, cyanotype toning, coffee filter effects, down to some rather lovely copper toning. And if you choose one of these, you've got all these sliders here to refine the effect. You can even alter the color of the underlying paper. There are two types of vignette. There's one based on photographically natural simulation of lens fall off, for those who like that sort of thing. And for those who want to be in the dark room burning edges, as we used to do, you can, you've got an option for burning edges. And of course, all these vignettes can be customized. So you can alter the size, the shape, the strength, the center. If you want to burn an edge, if you want to burn edges, you can say which edges and how much. You have all the control in the world. All the things I couldn't do in a dark room and wish I could. And then finally, you've got presets for lots of different types of border. And again, if you choose one, then again, you can customize it. You can make the border thinner or thicker. You can make it more ragged or less ragged, or determine where the ragged bits are. You know, the options are really endless. And then finally, I'd just like to demonstrate the power of the last iteration of control points. So suppose I wanted to select this horse. So I take a control point, I think it's somewhere there, and I make a circle that's big enough for the horse. Now, I haven't done anything else. This is very, very, very crude. And I want you just to see that the mask is quite crude too. So that's the mask where white reveals and black conceals. That's the mask that's made. It's not a precise mask, but it's a sufficient mask. So I defy you to see the join when I make the horse brighter, when I make the horse more contrasty, when I increase the texture of its skin, when I inject light into the shadow areas, when I alter the highlights and darken the midtones. Now, it's a thing of amazement to me, actually, that, sorry, I'll just set this back to where it was. It's a thing of amazement to me that one simple action like putting one control point there and drawing a circle gives you a sufficient mask, not a perfect mask, but a sufficient mask. And the reason is because of clever feathering. So what this technology is doing is it's sampling, as he said in the video, it's sampling the color and the brightness under the pin within this circle of influence. It's making what's exactly the same white, what's completely different black, and what's in between gray. But that gray is on a sliding scale. So the closer it is to the color that you've chosen, the whiter it is, and the further away it is, the darker it is. And there's a deliberate spill out here, outside the circle of influence. And the whole effect is to create a photographically sympathetic feathering, so that even a crude selection will give you a very good result, you know, one that won't show. Now, if you want, you can make this mask a lot tighter. The technology will let you do it. Now, I scarcely think it necessary, but I'll demonstrate it. So you've got 4 variables here. You've got the circle, you've got the color underneath this pin, you've got the brightness underneath this pin, and you've got the spill or feathering, if you like. So the first thing I could do is I could make a whole series of smaller circles like he did, copying across and in exactly the way that he showed you, and making this even smaller again. And no, there we go, like that, and maybe one down here. So already we've got a more precise mask. Now underneath each of these pins is a different color and a different brightness. So you need to put them in a group and average them. And you do it like he did, by clicking and dragging. So now you've selected all these things. You put them all together with Control or Command G. So now it's averaging across the whole horse. And then there's a slider here for brightness. So it's looking, and you can adjust the sensitivity of the program to brightness. You can alter the sensitivity of the program to color. You can alter the spill. So you can actually get a very, very, and there are other technologies as well. There are control lines as well as control points these days. So you can get a very tight, very precise mask. But it amazes me that it's scarcely necessary. So just to emphasize that point, I'll just do one more. This jacket looks rather dark, So I'll just there's my mask. It's not very precise. It doesn't matter. I can lift those shadows like that, and you won't see the join. Another point to emphasize is there's no limit to the number of control points you can have. So I could select the grass separately from the hedge, separately from the sky, separately from the rider's trousers, and I could control all of them very, very precisely. So very precise control if you want it, but very quick results if you don't. Okay, so that's a very quick demo of Silver Effects Pro. Now, despite what I've shown you, I wouldn't claim to be a real expert in this program. In a professional's hands, you'd get much better results again. But I do know that this program is capable of really, really exquisite results, if that's the sort of thing that you want. So time to sum up. Firstly, I think black and white has a number of strengths. It allows you to simplify, to emphasize, to tell a clearer story, to create a mood, to create drama. Viewers often think of black and white as sophisticated and special, and if you can get people feeling like that about your images, that's a good place to be. Secondly, to take a good black and white photo, take a color one, but make use of the camera to pre-visualize and see the world in black and white before you take the photograph, not after it. And thirdly, be wary about different conversion methods. Stick to perceptual ones if you can. If well used, the black and white filter can give excellent results. But if you want the very best, then pay up and learn Silver Effects Pro. And perhaps above all, I think study, learn, and be inspired by great black and white imagery wherever you find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
Great,
Peter, that's it.
Thank you, Keith. If you could just
Thank you, Keith.
unshare that. Lovely. Yeah, I think that was brilliant, as I was expecting. Well put together and really interesting. Thanks for that, Keith. I don't know if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, Keith. Keith.
Yes.
When you look in black and white on the screen on the back of your camera, how do you know what sort of conversion it's using, whether it's perceptual or the
no, I'm not using the conversion of the camera.
No, I know,
So-
but I mean, when you view, that's giving you an idea of what it's going to look like.
Oh, I see what you mean.
online.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it gives a rough indication. It gives,
Yeah.
but it's better than looking at things in color.
Uh-huh.
But it's not going to give you necessarily the contrast that you would have when you edit it properly.
No, it's just that if it's not perceptual, then you might think, oh, this is going to be a rubbish black and white, where in actual fact you could make it
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah.
One of the problems with recent photographic joiners is they're young enough to have only seen colour as a major part of photography.
Yeah.
And they tend to look at the colour rendition of any image to look for the beauty of the photograph. Whereas those of us who are extremely old remember that you didn't take anything in colour, you always took it in black and white. And one of the things you learnt then was to actually see what light was doing to the subject. So you can come up with a portrait, as Keith showed earlier, which looks quite acceptable in colour. But when you took your picture and you sent the film off and you got it back a week later, the actual black and white version was not very good. So one of the benefits of looking at the screen set to mono is you start to see what the light is doing rather than what all the colors are doing.
Yeah.
And that can be extremely different. You can get a picture which looks very good in color. As soon as you turn it's black and did I upset you, Gary?
No.
You woke him up.
I just thought you might hard to see me.
So I think what anyone who's never worked in black and white needs to do is to start looking at light as much as anything else to see how it casts shadows, etc.
Yeah, but it's sure a lot easier if you look on your monitor and it is black and white, even if it is a brightness conversion rather than a perceptual one, even if it's not perfect.
But all those wonderful filmmakers,
it's an awful lot easier.
All those wonderful filmmakers you mentioned at the beginning relied on lighting experts who could actually portray.
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah.
They do.
And I think there's definite advantage if you can start to see things in black and white.
Yes.
We used to have deep orange filters because some people could never see it. They were strong enough that when you looked through it, you really only had an orange monochrome.
Right.
And that allowed you to see more of the effect of light.
Yes.
All that sort of stuff's disappeared off the market now.
Yes. I think it might be educational to set your monitor to black and white, even if you're not interested in black and white, because as you say, you get an idea what the light is doing in the picture. So it's something I commend anyway.
Lovely. Anybody else got anything they want to ask Keith? No, all good. Well, obviously I'll get that. We've recorded this, so I'll get it up on the YouTube site some stage tomorrow. And then so you can go back and view it at your leisure, and saves you trying to take too many notes today. And it's always good to go back and work through it sometimes.
Peter,
yeah.
Is it worth asking, of the club members how many have, the Nick Collection Silver Effects Pro?
Yeah, has anybody else got it?
Yeah, I've got it.
You got it?
Old version.
You got what? Sorry, Terry? You got an old version, Terry?
Got the free Google version.
It's free, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've got it on my old computer, but I'm not even sure when I had it on there I actually used it. I'm pretty sure I did download it when it was free.
Yeah.
Don't like to miss a bargain.
I had it about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the control point technology has been, they've been migrating it across to the other programs, the color programs as well. So again, you can make very precise masks quite easily.
I think it's great myself. I don't I must admit I'm not a great user of the control points as yet, but I mean I tend to go from the, you know, the view on the left hand side, pick the one I want, and then tweak it on the right hand side. But I do use all sliders to tweak, and I can usually get something that I quite like, you know.
And you use it on your black and whites. You put in your
Yeah,
trains and
yeah.
the
Yeah.
You can see when you mention it, you can see, you realise what's out to create that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, in the old days, in black and white days, I used to use Adox KB14 film, which was very slow. It's about 60 ISO, I think it was, and that gave you really nice inky blacks and whites, you know, and that's what I'm striving to sort of try and achieve every time.
Also, Adox KB14 was superb for kind of silvery effect portraits.
Yeah.
It really was an excellent film.
Yeah.
Right. Have you looked to see if it's one of the film types that they give a preset for, that they simulate?
Yeah, I don't think it is, Keith. I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen it there.
What one have you got? You got another brand, Gary, haven't you? That's what that is. That Mono Effects, yeah.
Mono Effects, yeah, Mono Effects Pro is what I use.
But I guess
well, I feel sorry for you, Gary.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
All that money, and you've got the wrong program.
You might be right.
Why not rub it in, Keith? Eh? Okay. So that was, thank you, Keith. That was brilliant. Really interesting and informative, as I expected it to be. But you did let me down, and I should go back and go through that. And I can see in the next year's comps we're going to have lots of black and whites, which would be really good, wouldn't it? Maybe we'll have a black and white. Maybe we'll have a monthly PDI, which is just black and whites. Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it? I mean, Keith comes first anyway, and if it's colour, so it doesn't. You know.
There's no shame in coming second, then, is there?
Do what? There's what? No shame in coming
second to him.
No, there never is. Now, next week, as you hopefully you've all remembered, is the Mount Leach Trophy. And I sent out the email with all the information on. I'm sure you've all got it and read it and been preparing your photos. Now, Keith did offer to show how to put the two photos into one picture for projecting next week. That would be using Affinity. I didn't know if anybody wanted him to show you how to do that tonight. The other option is when you come to do your entry, which is obviously a PDI competition, is you send me both pictures across which you're entering, and I will put them into one photo for you. The choice is yours. So I don't know if anybody wants a demo of that tonight or not.
No, I haven't done it.
Nice to see it anyway.
Sorry?
It'd be nice to see it anyway.
Yeah, did you want to do that, Keith?
Yeah, sure. Did you want to record it separately so that people don't have to watch, 2 hours?
I'll stop that recording and then I'll start recording. And no, what I'll do is I'll stop it and then I'll put something together to send to them for yours. I'm not sure whether I can now record.
Oh, okay.
Separate. Oh, well, I'll carry on recording it, and I think I'll see if I can cut the video.
The recording. Yeah.
Or you can just give people the timestamp where it starts, and they can skip to it.
Good thinking, Terry.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm confused. What are we doing?
He's going to show us it in Affinity. How to put the two photos.
I'll show what I do. Yeah.
Keith will show you what he does.
Do you want me to share again?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are in Affinity. Let me just close these things so they don't confuse. Right. So you need first of all, you need a workspace or a bit of canvas, and to do that in Affinity, I go to File and New. I'm afraid it gives you all this choice and all the choice of, with other drop downs. And I ignore all that stuff because I don't actually know what size canvas I want. I decide that at the end, not at the start. So it defaults to, in mine, it's defaulting to an A4 sheet of paper, and I'm quite happy with that. Okay, now, one thing to point out here is you think you've got a white sheet of paper here, but there's nothing in the layer stack. And actually, this is a transparent workspace at the moment. Now, if you put 2 photos in this and you save it out as a JPEG, it will fill the transparent bits with white. So you'll get a white, you get a white background. If you want a colored background, then you've got to put a pixel layer in and color it. So I tend to do that at the end of the process. So now I have to get my 2 photos into here, and I can either find them and click and drag them into the picture, or a better way for me, I think, is to go to File and Place. So File, Place, and I choose a picture, and it's, for some reason it says Open rather than Place here, but it means Place. And you get that little symbol like a download, and you just click and drag till you get what you want. And then, having got that one, I'll place my, my second image. This isn't my entry. I hasten to add, but you click and drag again, and then I can line it up. And if you might notice, I get red lines that that show me that things are lined up, or I can get one that's lined up in the center. And those, if you haven't got those lines, you go up here to these sort of magnet things, and you make sure that you've got the first thing ticked, enable snapping, because that's gives you those guidelines really to help you. I don't know what the rest of it means, but that's, you just get that one, and it will do it. I then crop this thing to, to size. But it might be that I haven't got, it looks to me like this edge is bigger than this edge. So you can have guidelines that will help you do this better than I've done it crudely. So you go to View and Show Grid. And then if you look closely, this is 3 cells here. And this one's only 2 and a bit. So I would have to adjust that to, so that it looks tidier. But that's what I would do. And then I'm irritated with the grid, so I get rid of it. Now, suppose I want a colored background. As I say, there is no pixel layer to color at the moment. So this little symbol down here says Add Pixel Layer. But I don't want it at the top. I want it underneath. I want it underneath the pictures. So I just click and drag it to the bottom. Now at the moment, it's filled with whatever color is there. So I can change the now. So it's been filled with white in this case. Now, if I want a different color, I would go across to this symbol here. Looks like a bucket of paint, called the Flood Fill tool, and I click that. So I've got my symbol of a bucket of paint. I choose a color, which I could just do lots of different ways, but I can choose over here and then click, and it's colored the bottom layer like that. Okay. So that's got me 2 pictures and a colored background. And then if I wanted, so it's, if you want to get rid of this thing, which is irritating, you just go to click on the hand tool at any one time, and it's easier to know where you are. So suppose I now want some white lines around these pictures. Then I would select both the pictures. So I'm holding down the Shift key and selecting both the pictures. I would go down here to something called Layer Effects. And there are lots of different layer effects you could have, but I want an outline. So I click on outline. I want my outline to be white in this case. So I click on here and I click my mouse around till I get white. And then you can't see anything because it's the radius is 0 at the moment. I just make the radius bigger, and there's my outline. Okay, let's we'll turn that one off and have another go, because maybe we also want a line around the outside here. So I can select all 3 layers and apply the same effect. Outline, white. The only thing is that you've got an option for outside or inside each of these things, and outside is going to be outside the canvas. So you want to select inside, and maybe I haven't done it right. Okay, it's remembering it from last time. Anyway, that's the principle. Let's start again. And just show you again. So you choose a document, you place, open, pop one in. See, it doesn't take very long. It's really quite an easy thing. It's more the getting things lined up. That's the and choose, obviously, having nice pictures to put in. I'll do that and that and that, and apply. Add a pixel layer. Put the pixel layer at the bottom. Get the flood fill tool. Make sure you've got a color that you want. Selected.
Yeah, you got the wrong
tool. Yeah. Sorry, wrong thing. Right. Okay. Let's see if we can do all 3 at the same time now. So we'll go for outline. We'll choose white again. We'll make sure that it's inside, and then we'll increase the radius, and there you are. Yeah. So it's as easy as that.
Mm.
Now, of course, I chose any old document. This is an A4 size document, so I don't know how many pixels this is. If you want to put it in a club competition, you might have a limit on the size of the document. So you can resize it up here. You go into document and resize document. And then at the moment, this one's in millimeters because I set up an A4 thing, put it in pixels, type the number in one of those boxes, and because the ratio is locked, it'll sort out the other one for you, and you resize, save that off as a JPEG and send it to Peter.
Excellent.
Is that okay? Is that clear enough to everyone?
That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And now you could do in Photoshop, aren't you, Keith?
No, I'm not.
I can't.
It's not dissimilar in Photoshop. It's not as easy as that, but you can still do the same thing. Start with your canvas.
I'm sure you can. It's just I can't. But,
I just ask Keith, will that stay on the recording for tonight?
Yeah, yes. I think Peter said what he'll do is he'll put a time point on the recording, so you can drag the YouTube to that time point and just see that bit, and it'll be on the end of the recording tonight.
Okay. Are we having the original and the reproduction the same size, or one smaller than the other?
Entirely up to you.
Okay.
Entirely up to you. The layout is your choice how you get it. And like I say, if you're not comfortable or don't know how to do it, send them both across separately, and I'll do it for you.
And it was my suggestion. I don't know whether it's the right one, but it was my suggestion that the title of it should include the name of the original work, so just to make it easier for the judge.
Yeah.
So rather than giving it our own title, you think we should call our reproduction the same title as the original?
Well, yeah. You could say Van Gogh's lilies, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Van Gogh's sunflowers.
Yeah.
or something like that. And then it makes it easier for the judge, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to stop sharing, Keith. If you finish.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you. That's all right. We can all see each other then. Okay, so like I say, next week it's Maria is judging it. I'll send you an email out tomorrow just to remind everybody, and I'll put the original detail of the email in. We're going to be meeting in the hall. Maria's going to be judging. I don't know, not everybody can get to the hall, can they? So I will probably Zoom it as well, but it would be nice if we could all be in the hall. And also, as I've mentioned before, the following week we've got our Christmas party and our visit with Anne from SCPF, and we'd like everybody to put a photo in for us to put on the display board for the 19th, and that's for you to bring along next week if you can. If not, if you can get in touch with me and we can arrange to drop it round, or I'll collect it. But if everybody could put at least one in, if someone's got a couple they want to put in, that'd be fine. I think we'll have room. If we got room, we'll put them both up. If not, we'll just put one up. But it would be nice if you've got trouble mounting it, just get the picture to me. We've got some board, the club have got some board, and I'll get it mounted for you. The cut-off for the entries for next Tuesdays will be 9 o'clock Monday morning, because I shall need time to get it all loaded onto the system. All clear? Clear as mud, eh?
Yeah, thanks. If we want you to help, I've never mounted a photo on a bit of card before. So if I bring it next Tuesday, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll mount that for the following Tuesday. Yeah, I'll do that for you, Pete. That's no problem. Just
I've got
your
a question. So I've got
Sorry?
Affinity, right? So if I wanted to print an A3 photo,
Yes.
like Keith's shown how to resize the canvas, it will obviously keep the proportion. So does that matter? So you just like set the maximum size. You want set one of the dimensions as the maximum size for A3, and then it doesn't matter what size the other dimension is. Is that
Well, as
fair?
long as it's not outside the A3 size.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if for instance you had it, I don't know what the A3 size is in millimeters, but if you set that for the length, but the height was bigger than the paper, then you'd have to set the height to the size of the paper, and then it won't be quite so long.
Okay, so
Does
as long
that
as you
make
want
sense?
to, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so we're not having to sort of like change both dimensions and get it out of distortion. Just set
No.
one dimension. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
The aspect ratio of A3 is 1:√2.
Yeah, Peter will have to change the cutout in the mount to suit whatever aspect ratio you print it at. But also you need to leave, your printer will have some margins, so it won't print within 3 millimeters of the edge probably, and you probably ought to leave a little bit more margin than that anyway, so it's not really hard to position it in the cutout.
Yeah.
So A3 is 420 by 297, isn't it? I think, and you probably want to come in.
So I think that's just make it a bit smaller, Pete.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To allow for to attach it.
All good fun. We could have an evening just on that. In fact, I'm sure we have in the past.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so everybody okay, clear on all of that? That's not been too complicated, is it? I would, if it is complicated, just blame Dennis Peters, because it's his the winner obviously of the competition picks the subject for the following year's competition, but we might have to change that and keep it a bit simpler, I think.
Can you
just make sure you win then, and then you can pick it, can't you?
Yeah. Well, I'll do my best.
Pete, can you just run through the definition of the source image, the starting one that you're going to do a version of?
Right.
Dennis's original words. What did he say again? What was the definition?
Oh,
I think it's a reproduction, but it's your own style, so it can be any sort of interpretation.
But has the original got to be a painting or?
Yeah, it's a famous photograph or painting, or a work
album
of art,
cover, or book cover,
or a book cover,
or CD cover, or press article, press photograph.
Okay. Or what about an artwork, say a poster or yeah?
Yep, if you like. Yep.
Okay.
In fact, the example I gave was of a painting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Of the sunflowers.
Sunflowers. I mean, it's done very quickly, as you can see. Although
well,
I've
we've
now
worked that out. Yeah.
although that is my final entry.
It might be the only entry way things are going.
No, I think Keith's got some things planned.
Yeah, I'm sure they've all got a few things up their sleeve. We all have. Keith wants to be the first member ever to hold both trophies at the same time. And on a positive note, it makes it a lot easier for me to get the inscriptions done for the engraving. Okay. Right. All good? Yeah. I'll get that dropped out. Well, I'm busy tomorrow. I'll get it to you by Thursday at the latest, just a reminder of everything that's happening next week and the week after. Yeah. And then we'll hopefully we'll have some good entries for the next competition for next Tuesday for Mounts Trophy. That'd be great. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. All good.
Thanks.
Once again, thanks for tonight, Keith. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
really
thank you
enjoyed
very
that.
much. It's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
See you next week.
All right.
Thanks.
See you later.